Okay,
And you're going to start, right?
Starting now.
starting now.
So this woman raped a child, a man that was under 18 years old, and she's
15.
expecting payment from him.
Is getting payment from him. The court ruled in favor of child support, and that's kind of the line that's quoted.
She was an adult and the male was not.
He was 15, and he's paying her child support, yes.
That's completely wrong.
So, Ma, you were talking about the topic this week is going to be a suggestion for an international day for boys, or maybe a part of International Day for Men, recognizing these issues affect children, and men's issues start from early childhood. I mean, circumcision happens on the first day for some boys, and then by age 6, boys are already behind in school. So that's a good idea. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so basically the International Day for Boys is it's basically a copy of International Girls' Day. And there are certain countries that do have their own Boys' Day, like Japan. And Japan's Boys' Day is basically all sorts of sports and fun activities and things like that for boys. And, it's all very wholesome and stuff like that. But on a more international sense, it's more to do with activism, and it's to do with basically talking about the ways in which boys are falling behind and the problems boys have, so on and so forth. A big one that we've got is education. Another one is woke agendas infecting our schools. That's a big one.
Can I send you some DMs, like, very personally about this?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I know you want to contact me about a few things, but I've been a little bit distracted. Okay, so yeah, right. So basically we've got problems with education and things like that for boys. Boys are being their marks are being artificially lowered. So basically the marking algorithms, they take whatever the girl's score is, and then they reduce the boy's score. So it's lower than that, I think, or they give the girls a boost. It's something in that region, but basically they're using some sort of complicated math to make sure that the boys, on average, do worse than the girls in the marking system. This is Ireland. Blue is aware of this. We tried to post it to various subs. Nobody was interested. They were like, oh, yeah, sure.
The moderator of the Ireland subreddit said that it was an agenda post. And then I asked, and this is such a comment, I asked, well, what makes it an agenda post? This is a direct quote. I'm not making this up. This is a direct quote from the Minister of Education. And they said, well, your post history shows that you post on men's rights. So therefore, it must be in bad faith. How does that make sense? I mean, what does that change about the nature of what the post is? I'm like, this is affecting the boys in your country. This could potentially be affecting your own son or brother or cousin or nephew or yourself. You should care about this. I think we have lost Ma there for a second, but I guess to expand on that, it's incredible how many and how this would be related to International Day for Boys. It's amazing how many men are conditioned to not care about their own issues. And it's like you're sort of taught from a young age that if you're a man, you're privileged, and therefore any talk about men's rights or men's issues is misguided. And this is something that starts from a young age. So this would be affecting young boys too. I had a conversation, this is like 3 years ago, on Reddit. I forget how. It was just I saw some random comment on some thread about how, oh yeah, all the girls in my high school are smarter than me. And I remember I sent him a message about that. He says, yeah, it's true. Our teachers told us that girls are smarter than boys. And he believed it. And when I tried to tell him, listen, that's not right, he was very defensive about it. He says, oh, you're just a misogynist. And I can usually tell when people are trolling, but based on his post history and how he was writing it and how the conversation went, I don't think it was trolling. I think he actually believed that. And that's such a scary thing, considering that boys already get lower grades in all subjects, in all ages. I'm going to post all this stuff to the discussion board in a second. First of all, boys get lower grades in all subjects at all ages. And not only that, but boys get lower grades for the same work, which is a study, which is multiple studies have verified this. I'm going to post a couple of those as well. One of them is a BBC article, and one of them is a study from the MIT School of Economics, which shows pretty definitively that when you control for all factors, and the only difference is gender, you still see the difference, and that boys get lower grades for the same work. So I'm going to post all that stuff in the discussion now. But yeah, it's concerning.
You want to know a fun fact, or a not so fun fact? If you get rid of the gender from papers before they're marked, you don't see this bias anymore. Suddenly the boys are as good as the girls. So basically what's happening is that biased female teachers are giving girls higher scores and marking boys down for the same work.
That's an awkward thing to talk about. It's one of the things that would get us accused of being misogynistic, but the studies did show that, in fact, difference was in female teachers giving higher grades to girls. Male teachers were more fair across the board. And that's not me being misogynistic. That has been documented. And I'm pretty sure the MIT link, the middle link of the theory I just posted, shows that. And I think the BBC link might show that too, but it's definitely been documented.
Well, if one gender is being exceptionally sexist, then that's not misogyny. Although by misogyny, I think what they mean now is not a female supremacist. So you're not towing the line. You're not keeping up this silence, this agenda, this narrative, which says that you can't actually talk about what they're doing. And what they're doing is they are nerfing boys, basically. Blew your mics on. They are undercutting boys. They are basically trying to make it so that boys do worse, so that by comparison, girls do better. And this is equity thinking. This is what like boys have been doing so well for so long that we must ensure that girls do great for like however long they feel that's necessary, like 1,000 years or something. And it's that kind of thinking that's infecting the like academia and everything. And what it means is that they are basically they think that if they do this, then boys will what's the word? They think it makes it fairer, is what I'm saying. They think it's revenge, possibly, is another word. I'm trying to be charitable here. But the long and short of it is that they don't think very much of girls either, because they think that girls need to have special treatment in order to be as good or better than boys. So really, this is incredibly sexist in both ways. Go on, Blue.
If I can kind of interrupt on that. See, I don't know if I always agree that they think girls need special treatment. I think I think the feminists who I would agree with the idea of equality, and they might think that yes, because of systemic disadvantages, women and girls need a special edge, to make up for the difference. But I think some of the more toxic and political feminists, the kinds who post things like "kill all men," I don't think they need help. I just think that they're trying to make things as good for themselves as possible. It's just greed. They're happy to support things that benefits them just because it benefits them, whether it's fair or whether it's not fair. And The fact that feminist organizations will lie and manipulate statistics on so many things, such as domestic violence, such as the wage gap, shows that there's an intentional disingenuity. There's intentional dishonesty and manipulation on their part. And the problem is, I think, if you went around the world, I would say maybe 80% of human beings who would call themselves feminists are probably decent people who believe in equality, and they're just being brainwashed and misled. And have some valid points, to be fair. But it's that smaller group that tends to be more active in the organizations, in politics, in lobbying, in social media, that kind of controls the narrative. And they've essentially fooled millions of people to believe in them.
Can I interject on this for a second?
Go on.
Um, I was thinking that maybe it's because the college rates, acceptance rates for women were so long. But I'm reading articles right now that are saying that women and men are accepted at about the same rate today. So it wouldn't be giving the girls better grades so they get in faster to college. Um, so I think it's
Unless those
definitely
boys aren't
senseless
applying
what
in the
they're
first
doing.
place. You know, it
Yeah.
could be that, you know, and suppose that's true, I would still say there's a concern there as to why men are choosing not to go to college at the same rate. I mean, even if it's because they're not applying, are they being discouraged? Do they feel that it's a hostile environment? You know, are they just not motivated enough? You know, I mean, even if men are to blame for that, which I don't think they are, even if men aren't being motivated enough, then that's a social issue in and of itself. You know, like the issue of hikikomori in Japan. There's a whole generation of young men who are choosing to shut themselves off from society and stay in their rooms all day and just play computer games. Even if no one's forcing them to do it, there's still a problem with that, and there should still be an effort to reach out and fix it.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to say?
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah, sure, if you want.
I have a I have a story. It happened when I was in middle school. A friend of mine scored first in our whole class. Uh, After he was ranked first in our whole school, he was constantly bullied by two or three girls who were aiming for the first rank themselves. Uh, he was bullied for 2 days until one of them slapped him and berated him. He went to teacher. He went to our teacher. Him being a bit of a rebellious kid, teacher didn't do anything. In fact, she scolded him to not cause any trouble. And after that, he was so angry. He went to the principal right then and then. He called his parents and changed the class, but no actions were taken against.
So, hold on, just to check, these girls started bullying him for being smart?
Yeah, and ranking first.
Right. So how did, what was their logic there? Like, did they want the spot, or were they just jealous, you know?
They want the spot. They wanted the
Yeah.
spot. They were jealous.
Well, I guess they got it then if they bullied him out of the class.
Funny enough, after he changed the class, the girl that bullied him and slapped him became the first ranker, as he was the second one.
Yeah, it seems like everything in society is an exercise in giving girls and women what they want, without any regard for anyone else, and it really rankles me, because society should be fair, it should be a meritocracy, and whoever deserves to be first in class should be first in class. It shouldn't be a case of, oh, I can bully this person out, or, oh, you know, last week we talked about, I think it may even have been you who mentioned girls being automatically given first and second place just because they were girls, even though they weren't as good. Was that you, yes, last week?
I think I already gave another story. We talked a few times before about a competition where I originally won the prize, but they finally afterwards decided to give girls a few prize, but they still ask me to give speech on the Independence Day. Many situations like that happen. I think the main factor which are driving young boys into men's side is discrimination they face in the school. The discrimination they face in the school is it's real.
Yeah, that's I would have had a lot of fun with that speech. They would have been dragging me off the stage, to be honest. The well, moving on from that, we started this conversation with the basically the court case where the ruling was that the victim, a rape victim, had responsibilities to his rapist, and that is a sentence which could really get a judge disbarred. I don't know if that's a technical term for a judge, but that should really get a judge fired. Is saying something like a rape victim has responsibilities to their rapist, and then ruling that a child has to pay child support to their rapist. That really, it's amazing that nobody's slapped these people yet. It really is. I mean, I'm not advocating that, but it's really quite amazing. It's men will just take things, and they'll take things, and they'll take things, and they'll keep on taking things, and they will just get on with it. And I really don't know why men just they don't form a sort of they don't form a much larger lobby group than us, because really, and if you think about it, more men should have found us even with the censorship. I mean, a large part of the reason that our issues aren't front and center right now is because of all this censorship. But I do think that men as a whole have this sort of instinct. Well, actually, to be honest, we've got multiple citation studies proving that men care way more about women than they do about men. So it's really not a case of maybe. It's a case of men are just putting women first, and women are coming to them with these things which sometimes they say they're problems, sometimes they are problems, sometimes they're not, and sometimes they're problems most often, there are problems which also affect men, or the feminist solution is generally something which is going to impact men regardless. I was listening to a thing a little while ago about, I think it was the Canadian law on verbal abuse in relationships and like emotional abuse, and the feminists realized that the law was going to actually affect women too, and then they scrambled to try and rework the law so that it wouldn't affect women. And it's very interesting the way they'll do this, because I think the thing is that they know emotional abusers, like there are just as many emotional abusers who are women as men, and they like that because often they're emotional abusers. Like these people who do these sorts of things are the emotional abusers. So they'll make these laws which facilitate emotional abuse by only criminalizing it when the man does it. So if the man accuses them of emotional abuse, they can just turn around and accuse the man of emotional abuse and send the man to jail.
Okay, if I can just add something on the topic of boys and issues affecting boys.
Of course, yeah.
You just said how feminists, once they proposed a rule or a law, but once they realized that that law would affect women too, they suddenly tried to rework it. That exact thing happened in Sweden in 2010 for education. It might have actually been Norway, but I'm pretty sure it was Sweden. and they're basically the same thing anyway. Just kidding. But anyway, so the rule was going to be that they were going to have a 60-40 equal gender ratio for universities, meaning that at most a university could only have 60% students of one gender. You couldn't go above that ratio. So you couldn't go to like 61, 39%. But what started happening was because women are so much more likely to go to school than men, it was actually having the effect of increasing male school attendance. So there were universities that were 61% female and 39% male. And so this new law said that it had to be balanced to the minimum of 60% female and 40% male. And so they changed the law to exempt education, because every other part that they were looking at in society, like CEOs, boardrooms, company presidents, etc., were mostly male. But the one area that was mostly female was education, and they made a special exemption for that faucet of it, for education, because men were now getting the benefits from it. Let me see if I can find the source.
Yeah, they're so blatant about it. That's the thing that really gets me. Like, they'll just do this, and it'll be right there in public, and you're not allowed to talk about it, but it's there. We've got sources on it. We've got all the, we can prove it's happening, but nobody seems to really want to talk about it, and the mainstream Western press is all feminist, so they're not going to talk about it because it's the way they like it. But it's to get back to the boys thing, the subreddits pretty much, it's a regular thing on there that a boy will post about how much awful stuff is happening in their school to the boys, and they'll say things like, the girls will do something bad and the boys will be punished. That's pretty much the quote from one of these things. And the girls will do something bad, the boys will be doing it as well, but only the boys will be punished. Yeah, it's that sort of thing.
I have a ridiculous example. But just to quickly interject on that one point, I have a ridiculous example, and this actually happened at a summer camp. It was a jazz summer camp in Europe for teenagers who wanted to play jazz. And I'm a jazz drummer, and so I thought, that was really cool. And so I went, and basically it was like, kids from all over the world playing jazz together. And, we all were given dorms and given roommates because we were like, 14, 15 years old or so. And I was in a room of boys, and across the hall was a room of girls. And one day we went down to breakfast, and there were all these signs saying Thomas, Nico, Roger, and Ben. I forget their names, but whatever. Like the names of the boys in our room, come to the office right now, like in a really aggressive kind of text. And this is what happens. The girls across from us, they were discovered to be stashing bottles of liquor and booze on their windowsill. And when they were caught, they blamed us. And this is what they said. They said, oh, the boys must have snuck, broke into our rooms, gone on our balconies, and stashed the bottles in our room. And the counselor, I guess, the teacher, I don't know what to call her, I guess the boss, actually believed that story. And it wasn't until the girls confessed and said, no, actually it was ours, that she obviously said, wow, I can't believe you lied to me. But they got no trouble at all lying, and basically, and at least they confessed. But the fact that it was immediately believed that, oh yeah, the boys must have taken like 10 bottles of booze, broke into our locked door when we weren't there, opened our window, and hid their bottles outside of our window on our balcony. As if that would make, first of all, any sense at all that we would hide our bottles of vodka in someone else's room. So what, when we want to get it back, we have to break in the room again and get it a second time? I mean, it's insane. But that was actually believed.
That's
Well,
crazy.
sorry, go on.
I remember in high school, sitting across from this guy who was really quiet and shy. He didn't talk. and this girl was behind him kicking his seat repeatedly, and he brought it to the teacher's attention every single day of she's kicking my seat, I don't like it. And one day he got up and threw his desk across the room and said, "Stop kicking my seat." And that's when he got suspended. But I watched it unfold, and the teacher never punished her. She just sat there laughing about his outbursts. Um, and the teacher refused to move his desk. Like I've offered to trade, like I offered to trade my desk with him because it didn't bother me if she was kicking my seat. And the teacher said I couldn't do that. So I don't really see why they do that to men. That doesn't make sense in my head. And then they point fingers and say, "Look, he's crazy." I think that's a real issue.
I don't think people really take girls bullying people that seriously. It's like when a girl does it, it's seen as harmless because we have this mental block with regards to female guilt. I mean, this is something we've seen in studies. Uh, People judge males much more harshly than females, and they're much more likely to blame males in the first case than they are females. It's we've seen this across multiple studies. It's just the way humans are. You have to train yourself mentally, I think, or you have to be like already that way, but just to overcome it, I think, because it's just it's the Amber Heard thing. Everyone's on Amber Heard's side, but everyone knows that Amber Heard chopped the tip off of Johnny Depp's finger. Everyone knows she faked her bruises and she admitted to domestic violence, and all of the evidence is against her, and she's absolutely rubbish at hiding it. Like she barely even tries to hide it, but everyone takes her side, and like the
She's
judges,
still on advisory boards for domestic violence and violence against
yeah,
women. She's still
yeah.
part of family. I mean, it's like I used to,
L'Oreal
I mean,
say that she inspires them every day.
so is Cynthia Person, who was involved in torturing, raping, and murdering a gay man back in the 80s. She spent 26 years in prison, and when she got out, she became a speaker for the Women's March. And she says that she was treated unfairly because she got too much time in prison because she's a woman. She got 26 years for rape, torture, and murder. And
But
she's
that's about as
still
much as a
on
man would
advisory
get.
board.
I think Michelle Carter, who convinced her boyfriend to kill himself over text for a very long time, um, got only 4 or 5 years in prison. That guy killed himself because she pushed him to do it. And she only got so many years. And people are on her side as well, saying, well, if he didn't want to do it, he didn't have to. And it's just, I see that all the time.
I kind of understand the argument, not to defend her, but I don't think you could give her the same sentence as someone who actually pulls the trigger themselves. I mean, I do obviously agree with what you're saying that she did that to him. I do also kind of understand how you can't quite give the same sentence to someone who encourages suicide as you do to someone that actually like pulls the trigger themselves. So I
She only got
kind of
two and a
understand.
half years and reduced 15 months for
Yeah,
good
I mean,
behavior.
I get that. I mean, and I bet you if the genders were reversed, it would be longer than that.
If the genders are reversed, they'd never let him out. I mean, it wouldn't matter if the woman in the case, if like if uh, he was like abused. Sorry, I'm getting the genders mixed up because I'm trying to flip the genders here and show it. But like if it was a guy who was trying to, who said "I love you now, die," he would go to jail forever. Uh, if even if he was abusing him and mentally manipulating him into it, and people are trying to say that he abused and mentally manipulated her, but that's really really treating a woman as if she's a child, which is something that people seem to be prone to. Like when it comes to culpability, suddenly a woman is as culpable as like a 5-year-old, and you know there's suddenly no way she could possibly have told anyone about it. She couldn't possibly have gone to anyone and explained what was going on, and it's just it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's just we see it over and over and over again. Like the sub is, we actually get accused of highlighting, like over highlighting female abusers and people like that on the sub. That's like a fairly common complaint from the feminists. Is we over highlight it. That they put it in a very special way that makes it sound like we're demonizing women, but actually we're just showing that women are as bad as men, and that's really all we're doing. And we're saying, women should be held to the same standard as men because they're also adults. And when they're not adults, when they're children, and when they're abusing boys, they should be held to the same standard a boy would be. It's really quite simple, but for a lot of people, it's a huge ask because they've got this mental um, thing where it says we've got to protect girls, and treat them like children and lump them in together with the children in the stats and things like that. I mean, a lot of that is feminists doing that, but that is something that's been going on a lot longer than feminism has been around, where they'll say 5,000 killed, 12 women and children among the dead. You can date that back to like the earliest newspaper. It
By the way,
else?
yeah, I was about to say, I think what you're going to say. A lot of these chats end up being mostly 2 or 3 people talking, like me and Ma, and then sometimes Kathleen and sometimes Painter. When we started doing these chats, we always kind of hoped the vision would be that we kind of take a back seat and it's mostly the users talking. So you guys. So if you're like kind of sitting here like wanting to talk and waiting to speak, you don't have to like get permission to talk. You're free. This is an open. I mean, please don't talk over each other, but we want this to be like very free flowing. So if anyone has anything to say anytime, please, I mean, don't interrupt someone, but when you have a chance to talk, then do so.
I think there was a story which someone else posted about a woman in India that killed at least 7 people, including an infant and a 10-year-old child, and an elderly woman, her husband, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law. So she could take all the money from their household and run away with her lover. She wasn't given a death sentence. Even some women's organization fought in the Supreme Court on her behalf so that she shouldn't get death sentence. I don't know why would any women organization uh, be advocate, devil's advocate, they like to say, for a woman that have killed 7 people, including an elderly and a small child and a 10-year-old boy, so that she can run away, rob the house and run away with her lover. She didn't get a freaking death sentence. And even now, the media, uh, many women's organizations are excusing her behavior because of some patriarchy.
Patriarchy. She wanted the cat. I mean, the only patriarchy is there is if the cat has pictures of men on it. Like, I heard about that, and her lawyer is a piece of work. They were arguing that it'll be really sad if her unborn baby is left without a family, like left without a mother. He specifically said mother. I don't know if it's he or she actually. They specifically said, you know, her unborn child would be left without a mother. And isn't that tragic? I mean, couldn't she have a chance to strangle this one as well? You know?
That
Like,
boy is 11 years old now, 11 or 12. He's not even a kid.
sorry, what?
The kid, her unborn child, is now 11 or 12, I think.
Oh, really? Well, I
Yeah.
think they're old enough to understand that mummy needs to stay in jail, I think, or at least, at the very least. But honestly, if a man can get the death sentence for that, then so should a woman. But
Yeah, I'm not pro death penalty per se.
me neither. I'm pro fairness, though.
Right.
Like fair.
It's the inequality, and it's like people are going to frame that as, oh, so you're saying if men get executed, you're saying women should be executed too. I'm saying no. That's actually not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't think that men should not have the leniency afforded to them that a female defendant would get. Is my point. I think what you're
Good
saying
way
too.
of putting it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm just arguing for fairness. If you're gonna execute men, then women are also adults, and therefore they should be in that same pool of people. But even in countries which do execute women, they are much slower to do it. It's really difficult to get a woman executed. I think to give an example of what it takes for a woman to be executed in America is basically she has to murder her entire family with a pickaxe. And well, I probably shouldn't tell you the other bit there, but she has to get off on it as well. Like
I'm sure you've
that's
seen.
what it takes.
I'm sure you've seen the movie Monster, right?
Which no, I haven't.
Okay, it was about Charlize Theron was in it. It was 17 years ago. It's about a famous serial killer, a female serial killer, true story. Her name was Aline Warnos, and I'll put a link to the wiki page of the movie. Actually, I'll just do a link to her, the actual real person. And she killed.
Let me stop you right there and ask. I'm going to make a bet here and say that the film takes her side, but
No, actually, not really. Not really. It's. I mean, it clearly makes her look evil. It's like 10 years ago since I watched it. But no, it's not all that bad. It's not all that badly done. I mean, like any movie, it has to make the character somewhat appealing to watch. Like the movie The Downfall about Adolf Hitler in the bunker. It doesn't just show him as a raving maniac, because that just wouldn't be an entertaining movie to watch and show. It does show him his human side somewhat, which of course you're going to want to do for any movie. I mean, the movie Zodiac, about the Zodiac killer with Jake Gyllenhaal, which was really good, by the way. Yeah, it made him look like a total psycho, which of course he was. But it showed him having human moments, which not entertaining to watch a 2-hour movie unless you have that.
on a movie list now, Zodiac and Monster. All right, but yeah, I find that interesting that they did actually not take the angle that I thought they were going to, because I've recently heard about them making a movie about Bobbit, and I've basically tuned out from it because they were casting her as the hero.
Yeah, that is so infuriating. I know exactly. I remember seeing the first billboard actually went up on the corner of Hollywood and Highlands in L.A., right where the Oscars happened, and I actually remember when Variety, a second entertainment magazine in L.A., did a piece on it, and it was from the angle of exploring abuse of women, and I'm like, wait a minute, she's the one that mutilated him.
Yeah, for the people who aren't familiar with the case, Lorena Bobbitt, well, from what I gather, her husband told her he wanted a divorce, and then he waited until he was asleep and cuffed his penis off. And then there's actually two different cases of this I've heard, but in one case, I'm not sure which case it was, but I think she was the one who threw it out the car window. But then she rang the emergency services and told them where it was, and they were able to attach it, reattach it. Yeah, it has to be that one, because in the other one, the woman put the penis into a garbage disposal, and it got liquidized.
Which Sharon Osbourne found hilarious.
Yeah. Then they gave a
I actually
really
think-
insincere apology.
I actually think that Ozzy might be in an abusive relationship. I've often thought that she might be controlling, that she's, and I hate to say it, I hate to accuse someone like this publicly, but I'm gonna defend it by saying, you know what, my probable cause is the fact that she thought that was funny as the mother of a son, and she laughed at that on live TV. So I won't apologize that much. You know, that you just wonder, someone who thinks like that, how do you think they're treating their partner? How do you think they're treating their son? I mean, I just can't imagine finding that funny. I you know, and I was actually thinking about this today to kind of, I guess, broaden the point, but it's still, even now, seen as funny in comedy movies and television when women are violent to men or women punch men. And I've noticed, and I think we actually discussed this before on one of our videos, you still today, you see trailers of a new Netflix show where one of the shots is a woman punching a man or a woman being violent to men. And I've noticed an increase in that, as if that's supposed to make me want to watch it more. Like, oh, I like that. That's great. No, it's just, it's not only not getting better, but it's getting worse.
Feminists regard it as punching up. In the metaphorical sense and the literal sense at the same time. Punching up as in attacking authority, like they're attacking the bad man. They're fighting back against the patriarchy, or this imaginary force in their head, which is represented by this one man who's like possibly slightly rude. It's like that thing in that movie where, what's it called, Captain Marvel, where like I think he goes up to this biker and she wants his bike or something, or I don't even remember what it was. I know she ends up stealing his bike and his clothes, but like he's mildly rude to her, and that justifies her being violent, and they actually recut it so it was less violent, from what I recall. But yeah, it's and this isn't a new thing, to be honest. If you watch old black and white movies, like there's an awful lot of female empowerment stuff in them. Like I've got the Buster Keaton box set, and every movie I've watched so far, I haven't watched most of them, but every movie I've watched so far starts off with a man being beaten about by a woman. And they're full of things like women getting the upper hand on men. And if you put these on the TV, like if you remade them without changing anything, they would, by and large, be considered pretty woke, I think. Just from the point of view of the direction the violence is going in. I am aware that there are slapstick parts later on where women are the butt of the slapstick as well. Like there's a scene where a woman slaps a man and he whops her over the head with his guitar, and that's fair. That's entirely, like, that's what would happen if that's completely gender neutral. Like you could recast that the other way around, and it would just be the same, because it's just slapstick. But you've got these things where it's just like violence is not just acceptable, but it's funny. And I mean, has anyone seen that BBC thing where they had like they did the social experiment, man and woman slapping in, getting slapped and abused in public, and it was
I
two of them.
have.
Yeah. They interviewed this woman who was like fist pump yeah, because a woman was abusing a man in public, and I think that's very. Does anyone else want to chip in with anything interesting that they've got? Please do feel free to, as long as you're not interrupting mid sentence or something, just sort of pop in and, say whatever you're thinking. You don't have to. Oh, she.
Hi. How about the fact that we teach our daughters what consent is, and we teach boys to keep their hands to themselves or whatever, but we don't teach boys about their consent with their own body, but we teach girls that. I think that's something that isn't really talked about within the feminist groups I'm in, or that I've observed, um, is the unequal education about consent and bodily autonomy.
There's I saw a study a little while ago. Something like 40% of all boys say they've been groped or forced into sex. So basically, I think 20% were groped and 20% were forced into sex or something. I can't remember the exact numbers. It's on the citation list. But it does make you think, what the actual rape numbers are for young boys in this society.
I think there's a stigma of boys talking up about it because they are taught that any affection they're supposed to enjoy, and only like like I've literally heard men say to young boys, you should have enjoyed that. I would have died to been touched by her. And I think that is an issue as well, is the the way we view rape towards boys is not the same as we view it towards women.
Well, it's
But
not
I've
only
I've seen that been said before to boys, and that's really gross to me.
it's not only that, but also another thing that's told to boys and men from a very young age is, pardon my language, I'm going to say it as it's been told to me, not by my parents, but by others. Man the fuck up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
What does that even mean though? Like I don't.
basically, as a man, does not matter what the world throws at you, what happens to you in this world, no matter how hard this world hits you, no matter what happens to you, you are not allowed to show any emotion at all. You are not allowed to show that anything in this world gets you down, that anything in this world is affecting you. You are not allowed to show anything. You are to remain a stone soldier. You are to remain emotionless through it all, and you are to take it all. Does not matter how hard it is to take in, but you are to do it.
This is a hypocrisy I find with some feminists that is so infuriating. Is how feminists will tell you that, oh yeah, we agree with that. That's toxic masculinity and how men aren't allowed to express themselves. But then when men start groups like this one to express ourselves, what do? They call us terrorists and misogynists and incels. It's like, wait a minute, you were just talking about how toxic masculinity is affecting men because it doesn't allow us to express our emotions. But then, when we form a men's group to express our emotions, you come down and say we shouldn't exist. And you come down and say the group is sexist. It's like, it's what it is that they want to own, essentially, which is why they always drive people towards men's lib on Reddit, because they want to control the conversation. When they say men should be able to express themselves, it should be under their terms. They should express feelings that they approve of and the way that they approve of it. Because man the fuck up is basically the same thing as incel tears or fragile male redditor is another subreddit, which is basically what you're saying. It's mocking us for quote whining when we're expressing our issues from our lived experience. So I would say that's both an old school way of thinking, and I would say it's something that a lot of feminists are propagating now.
The amusing thing is that the feminist sub is what this is. Blue's actually referring to a post which was just on the feminism subreddit, which was this long list of complaints and like whiny complaints for our movements, and like it was saying, where like, oh, feminism has done all these wonderful things for men, and we never do anything for men, even though their movement is actually 100 times bigger than ours, and actually hasn't done anything very much for men.
All right,
But
I'm gonna cut in right there. There is not a damn, and I'm gonna pardon my language once more, and I'm gonna speak my mind real quick. There's not a damn fucking thing feminism has done for men. And here's why I say this. As a man who has been dragged through the courts for a simple fucking divorce, feminism did not help. If anything, it has hindered the ability for a divorce where there was no children involved, for that shit to be done quickly. Feminism has actually ruined the ability for men to be able to escape women who have beat the shit out of them, dragged down their mental health and their mental well-being and their stability, and deteriorated them into almost committing suicide. Feminism has literally made it where, in order for a man, this is a scary statistic and a scary thing to know, but I found this out because of the shit that I've had to go through. If a man wants to get, sorry, I'll watch my anger. If a man wants to get any type of restrictions or any type of protection, like a PPO or anything like that, here in the United States of America, the land of the free, home of the brave, from a woman, it's dang near impossible. But if a woman feels that she wants it, all she has to do is go before a judge. In other words, I feel threatened by this man, and it automatically will be given to him. No question asked.
Wolf, let me ask you, and I understand your anger. I appreciate you apologizing for your language, but try, we're not like sticklers for that kind of rules because people are people and humans, have emotions, but we do try and keep the language mostly clean just for, appearance's sake because this is put on the internet.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned being abused and almost committing suicide, and if you don't mind me asking this, I think you were saying that this is something that you yourself have either experienced in person or have witnessed in person.
It was person. It was me.
So I have the debate sometimes. I had a debate actually yesterday on Reddit with someone who was trying to dispel the bias in court systems. And they were saying, oh, well, the reason why men don't get to see their kids is because they ask not to see their kids. And the reason why alimony is mostly given to men is because of the wage gap, but it's equal when it's a woman who earns more. And they were just totally trying to dispel it. And they were saying, well, female victims are actually less likely to be believed. You're telling me your personal experience or direct experience would suggest the opposite of that.
So, from what I have seen from talking with my lawyer, who who at this current moment in this time has had over 23 years of experience in family courts, he has seen that the women will get the custody over the males more often than not. In cases where there's a divorce that comes into play with children involved. And it does not matter if the man can prove that the woman is abusive to the child or to the children. It does not matter if the male can prove that the woman is abusive verbally, physically, mentally, emotionally, or anything here in the United States. The reason as to why is because here in the United States, the courts do not like to separate women, especially mothers, from their children. They would rather separate the males because they feel that the males will tend to swing the children to become biased against the female or the mother that is no longer in the picture full time. When in actuality, what tends to happen more times out of not, from what I have seen from friends' divorces and from a lot of other actual real life cases that I have watched unfold, is the opposite. Women tend to swing the kids the other way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how do they have this assumption that it's a specifically male thing to do to try and swing the child against? Like, why do they only assume that one way?
Oh, I know that. I know this one. If you look at every single thing that feminists accuse men of, is something that they do. That's why. They will take whatever they do, everything, nasty and evil that they do to men, they will project it onto men and say, there, they do it. They are the main people who do it, and we need special laws to make sure that we punish that. And just make sure that you don't sweep up the victim gender in that, because that's basically how they think. They think of us as a perpetrator gender and a victim gender. It's the Duluth model. It's everything. It's like all the way through their rhetoric, their lobbying, all of it. This is why in India, Israel, and Pakistan, and many other countries, feminists will stand up and say, no, we don't want an equal rape law or an equal domestic violence law. We want a special gendered law which doesn't include male victims, just in case the men counter-accuse the women of rape. And what they really mean is just in case the male rape victims want to get justice against their rapists. Because these people, I mean, if you look at the actual lobbyists involved, Blue's actually found like several on the UK domestic violence law who were actually female abusers of men, and they were making sure that this was a gendered law.
And furthering that, another thing is, you got it right. Society views women as the nurturers and caretakers of the world, and it's very sexist. Let's put it like that, because nowadays that's of actually funny talk in of itself. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, because oddly enough, um, it's actually starting to swing the other way. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Let me just, because when you were saying go down that rabbit hole, to what about society seeing women as the natural nurturers? To what extent? I'm going to ask you, nature versus nurture. To what extent do you think that is an inherently evolutionary, biological tendency?
I
So,
don't think it is. I think it's nurtured into us from when we're born.
when we're starting out as a young age, um, we need our mothers. that is a guaranteed thing of life. Does not matter if you're male or female. From the ages of, and this is seen in early childhood development, um, your very young ages, um, you need to have your mother around or a female figure because that's how you start to develop your emotions. That's how you start to connect in with them. Then, usually around the ages of 8 to 18, that is when you need the male figure to be around. The reason for this is because the male figure is usually seen as the disciplinary figure. Now, this is where you can bring in the topic of nature versus nurture. A lot of the things which we do today in society are come back into that topic of nature versus nurture. The coddling which has happened to a lot of the modern generation is a nurture scene because if we go back to the days of the old style, and I mean not the 1800s, I mean let's go back to the Romans or let's go all the way back to Sparta. At a young age, this the new the those that were born um, in Sparta, they would be first after they were born. They'd be looked over by a priest to make sure that they had no defects. If they were found to have defects, they'd be thrown away and cast out. Then, if they didn't have any defects, they would be handed back to their mothers. Now, the males in Sparta, even if they were married, sometimes they would live with their wife. Other times, especially during war times, they would not actually live um, with their uh, with their wives. And this is where the nature versus nurture stuff comes into play. So just bear with me and come along with me as I take you down this rabbit hole. Now, during the war times, the Spartans, especially the children, would start learning skills and stuff from their mothers during war times. Then, when they were ready to actually start their training, their fathers would come back into the picture. Or it wasn't actually their fathers. Sometimes it was. Most of the time, though, it wasn't. Usually, it would be an uncle or somebody would come back into the picture, to my knowledge, and would start to train them from a young age. And then they would start to enter into their trials and stuff like that, where they would be basically casted out of society and forced to survive. So, a lot of the things which we view today in society.
And don't forget the stealing tests too, where they would be encouraged to steal from the local market, and if they were caught, they were beaten. They weren't beaten for stealing; they were beaten for getting caught because stealing was seen as a good skill for the military for a soldier because to be like stealthy and sneaky and whatnot.
Exactly. So it's a great concept of nature versus nurture because the nature side of it is what nowadays society sees men are taught by other males, whereas the nurture side is what society now sees that children, I should say, the nature side is what male or is what children um, are taught by male figures, and the nurture side is what children are taught by female figures. That is what society views that topic as nowadays. And it's a very scary thought to think of it like that.
I disagree to an extent on the idea that children need their mothers for the early life and their dads for the later life. I think that they need both all the way through. And I do think that even from an early age, they need the dad because I've actually seen like a young couple bringing up a little girl, and I saw the way the dad interacted and things like that. and he was a little bit hands off with it. But at the same time, what he was, you know, doing in that was encouraging her to be more adventurous. And I do think that coddling can be fairly important to an extent, but I do think that it needs to be strongly balanced by that adventurous side, because that is the adventurous side where, like, an example would be, this isn't the same girl, but I heard a story about a dad who would let his daughter, like, he'd encourage his daughter to climb on things and, like, climb up high, and it didn't matter if she got a little bit hurt, because getting hurt is about testing boundaries and it's about knowing your limits and things like that. Like, if you bump a knee or something like that, that's an important thing in childhood, like raising your knee and stuff like that. It's, it softens you up, it teaches you, well, it's a moment where you could either learn to, be independent and deal with it yourself, or where you could be coddled and learn to be over reliant on your parents. And there is a problem with mothers in that you can become overly reliant on them. And this is especially a problem for the disabled, like people with like autism and stuff like that, or Down, where they'll become overly dependent on the mother, and by extension the dad, if the dad isn't, like, fulfilling his dad role and pushing them to be independent and learn skills. And that can actually make the disability way worse. In fact, you can give a child a disability by coddling them. It's called learned helplessness, and I've seen it multiple times, and it's absolutely scary. You end up with an adult who just can't fend for themselves. They don't, like, it is something that happens a lot with like children of the rich, especially because, like, they have servants to do everything for them. It's like in that culture, it's an especially big problem. But, like, it's something that anyone at any level of society can end up with, where the parents do everything for them, and then they get to adulthood without learning how to do any of it themselves, and without gaining the automatic mental sort of like programming to just sort of do it themselves, like to know that they could do it themselves and to automatically do it themselves instead of asking for help. Because you can either end up, getting something and asking for help immediately, or you can end up going the other way and being super independent, or you can end up in a situation where you instantly give up the moment you encounter any kind of resistance. And I know a few people like that, and it's sad and it's depressing when you get somebody who they encounter some kind of resistance and they give up. They don't find a way around, they don't look for solutions. Their immediate answer to the problem is to stop trying. And that is a form of learned helplessness as well. And I think, honestly, that learned helplessness is a huge problem in our society today. There's probably a lot to do with why feminists want everything to be, laws for everything, and everything must be tightly controlled and stuff like that, because they're looking for the government to be a surrogate parent. But, that's just one theory.
And
I don't think it's based on gender though. Yes, honey. Because there have been studies where children are raised by strictly men, gay parents, and strictly women, lesbian parents, and they turn out just as good as children raised in a both mom and dad household, and also children who are raised with multiple parents, like two moms and two dads, or whatever the combination is, turning out just as good. I don't think it has anything to do with gender. I think it has to do with the relationship that the parents have to each other and their emotional well-being towards the child and how steady and stable they are in their relationship.
That's fair enough, although I would like to see the criteria for a successful person that they're using there. But I mean, I do find that gay people tend to be mentally somewhere between male and female in terms of how they act. So it does depend. You get the hyper girly lesbians and the hyper girly gay men, and the hyper masculine gay men and the hyper masculine lesbians. So it's very much a mixed bag there, and you kind of have to. I think you'd have to be quite careful with how you constructed a study like that. So it would be quite interesting to read how they did that. But I mean, I'm not arguing that uh, the you can't have two parents who are like in a gay relationship who bring up a child who's perfectly healthy and reasonable. I'm just saying that you do need that mixture of you need the soft side and you need the hard side, and the hard side needs to, well, not hard, but like
I get
independent.
it. I think a child should have multiple role models throughout their life, not just their parents, but everyone, many characters involved, so they can develop further past, you know what I mean? Like it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that extended families are something that Western culture really misses out on.
But
I think that,
Agreed.
yeah,
there is one thing though that I will disagree in that statement though. Role models. Western culture especially does this, and this is one thing that irritates me. We put too much emphasis on role models being celebrities or being famous people. Um, you can think of billions of people out there that are celebrities and all that jazz. However, and this is where this frustrates me because we as a society, especially within the feminist side of it, they love to prop up that one, what is she, like a high schooler or grade schooler that was touted to be like the next Stephen Hawking's or something, and was like, and went on to say something about how things needed to end world hunger or whatever it was, I forget. Anyways, um, we need to stop idolizing these movie stars and these celebrities because
We
at the
don't
end of,
idolize them, we dehumanize them.
well, not really.
I,
There's a lot
I,
of,
I would say I would say that we idolize them. I would say that celebrity worship is kind of similar to sports in how it's like an escapism. Like we love watching star athletes and movie stars and rock stars because A, I mean, we like what they do, we like the work, but B, it's like a fantasy. It's like an escape, from your mundane life. It's like, you're a Uber driver or you're a waiter or you're a busboy, which are all things I did when I was in LA. And it was much more fun fantasizing about the Oscars and being in a movie and all that kind of stuff. So
But we
I
forget
do.
that they have,
I
what I mean
agree.
by
Oh, I
dehumanizing
agree.
them.
Oh, I agree.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's crazy. I'll never forget. Um, I was in line at 7-Eleven and I saw those tabloids, those like crappy low like B-list celebrity tabloids, and the headline was Leonardo DiCaprio goes to Starbucks. I'm like,
What?
what?
That reminds me of that recent Ben Shapiro thing where it's like Ben Shapiro buys a single plank of wood. It's like everyone was getting really angry about it or something. It's like somebody turned it into like a cover for a movie or something, and it's like Ben Shapiro in Visit to Home Base or something. It's
A-
stupid.
and what I mean by this is that like there's a lot of places and a lot of families who put um, a lot of emphasis on their children to become the next LeBron James or Dwayne Wade, and they force their kids to play into this idolized role, and they force these kids to compete in these athletic-based sports and whatnot like this. And this is where I'm getting with this is that we in the Western side, we force our kids to do all this stuff. And when our kids fail, it's it's kind of funny because instead of us as a Western culture coming together and be like, all right, you tried your best. So what? You messed up, you didn't make it. Okay, time to go on to what you actually are good at. Instead, we force the kids to double down and force them into practice even harder. I used to
Maybe
work
that's
with a
why. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I used to work with a gentleman who tried to go was extremely did well in basketball. He tried to get into the NBA here in the U.S. He played all throughout his grade school, all throughout his high school, and then after high school, getting pushed all the way through. He then went to try out for the NBA and failed. And instead of saying, okay, I have to go to college and I'll get better while I'm in college, and he was selected to go to some like tier one, like top of the top line schools here in the states. Instead of doing that, he decided to go overseas and play in the European leagues. Which I'm not downgrading the leagues at all. Don't get me wrong. Don't think of it like that. But instead of seeking out that education, which would have helped him in the longer run than a career as a athletic player in the inevitable end of what happened, because eventually he got injured and then had to go then had to go back to school, and he never was able to actually play in the NBA. So,
Sounds like
it,
sunk cost fallacy to me.
hmm?
Sounds like sunk cost fallacy to me. Where
Mhm.
you pour so much time and effort and money into something that you feel Blue, your mic's going again. Blue, are you there? Sorry, you pour so much time and money and effort into something that you feel like you have to succeed at it, no matter the cost. When in actual fact, it might not be, the thing that you're even the best at. So it's like fail fast is a programming term. You create things very very quickly to see if they work. Like you rough things out. In art they call them scamps, where you just draw like the most basic outline of something, and you see if it's going to work before you commit to it. And like if you committing to something and then realizing it doesn't work is the worst thing you can do. But well, no, it's not. Sorry, committing to something and then realizing it doesn't work and then not quitting is the worst thing you can do. Like keep on trying and trying
But
and trying.
it's such a hard fantasy, and I had this. I mean, this happened to me kind of in LA. Chasing the whole entourage acting movie star dream. It's such a hard fantasy to let go to. I mean, to let go of. I mean, if you're in the NBA, even if you're even the worst NBA player is still probably a millionaire or making $500,000 a year. I mean, you're still the status of that forever and ever for the rest of your life. You were in the NBA. I mean, that's such a hard dream to let go of, especially if it's something you've done since you're a child. I mean, just to be there, like all of a sudden, 95% of the problems that most people have, and I know this might be controversial, but I'm still gonna say it. If you have something like that, you never really have to worry about money. You never really have to worry about your social status. You never really have to worry about your job, except for keeping your job, I suppose. You never have to worry about finding meaning in your life. I mean, it's like you have that. It's like you're an NBA player. So I
It does
understand the.
depend on how successful you are.
But
There are
it's like,
NBA players who end up broke.
I mean, that's true, but a lot of that I would say is personal decisions because the minimum
Yeah,
salary is still very high.
yeah.
Even the worst Premier League player in England is still basically an ability in terms of the social status.
Mm. Yeah, there is this sort of sense that people get into these professions where uh, they have a shelf life as a person, but they won't treat their finances as if they have a shelf life. They'll think, oh yeah, I'm going to be making money on this forever, and like OnlyFans do this, and like every profession with a shelf life does this, and they end up broke at the end of it because they spent all their money as fast as they were making it. Anyway, that's off topic. Totally off topic. We've gone on to basketball. I don't know where we got from there, but
Actually, I would
yeah,
disagree it's off topic because I would say a lot of young boys, we were talking about the education gap. Obama had a very good comment when he was talking about, young men dreaming about being athletes or musicians or superstars instead of dreaming about being doctors or engineers. I actually do think that this affects young men. I do think it affects boys who they concentrate more on sports than they do on school because they have dreams about being a famous athlete and they don't study as hard. And I think that part of our culture I actually do think has an effect on boys.
Well,
Does think I should.
why okay, this is something that bugs me. Okay. Why do we put so much emphasis on everyone becoming doctors, lawyers, financial advisors when we need more truck drivers, plumbers, electricians, or as those that are over there in the or in the UK call them Sparkies, which I kind of like
shit,
the
I was gonna
terminology
say that.
Sparky. I love the fact that you UK folk, you guys call them Sparkies because, boy, I am a trained avionics technician, which for those of you who don't know that, it's basically the electrical side of aviation, and I have taken myself and blown myself a couple times across the hangar. Fun stories there, but that's for another time. But
Okay,
we
but can I
put
ask you why are we retiring the F-22 too early?
there's a lot of mechanical issues.
Really?
Yeah, that's another whole debate of it itself, buddy.
Is it as
Uh,
good as it is as good as we say? Like, just to go off topic, but this, like, I heard
Maybe
someone
take
say,
that to the lounge later, Blue. That might be a good idea.
we'll take that
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
Um,
But
but
although
like,
I am interested too, but yeah, I was actually going to say that we should be really encouraging a lot more boys to become carpenters as well, because we're really, really short of carpenters,
well,
electricians, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
well, not
like
just
you said.
boys, but also get girls. Like the thing is,
Oh
at the
yeah,
end of
yeah,
the
girls
day,
too.
this is what I don't like is that okay, we tell everybody and this is the one thing, like I work with a lot of children that are in high school and whatnot, and I'm a young adult, and I work with children. I call them children even though they're teenagers, and they're getting up there and they're almost ready to graduate out of high school, but I still call them children because they're younger than me. So if you're younger than me, sorry, but I'm just gonna call you a child. Fun part of life. But I I work with these boys and girls, and I tell them like, look, you don't have to go to college. You know that, right? Like, you can go another route. Like, you can go to a trade school, become a electrician, become something else. It takes less time. Like, the average auto mechanic or even diesel mechanic makes a good chunk of change. And yeah, you'll be working under a car and you'll be working under the hood, but like a diesel engine, psh, you're not bent over a car's hood, so you're not screwing up your back, and you're upright. You're working inside of a truck, and you're working on a bus.
There's a washing machine repairman round me who charges something like 50 quid for a call out simply because there's nobody else. It's just like he is very good, but he can just charge this huge premium because there's nobody else really around who can do what's can repair washing machines and things. It's just like he's an ex like whatever the I can't remember the name of that famous washing machine company, but he's like a real famous washing machine company. He charges loads of money, but it's it's like that's horrendous money just for a call out. That's almost scam level money, but he can charge it because nobody else around here can repair a washing machine. Yeah, but we should be encouraging all kids to be going into these trades.
Or another trade that's starting to die off, and I know that not many people want to talk about this because, oh boy, this is a nasty topic to even talk about. Gunsmiths. And again, I know, oh boy, this is a nasty topic to talk about because the world that we live in. But, you know, people that can actually redo and recreate a barrel, like true gunsmiths that can fix a rifle, they're a dime a dozen nowadays. And the average gunsmith here in the US, entry level, you're making about 45 to 50 a year. And you get to sit down quite a bit of your day. So that's pretty good cash.
I mean,
I'm not going to object.
Just imagine what happens to society, and this is something else that we've talked about. Imagine if in Spain there was a women's strike where women didn't do any housework or any work for the entire day, and they were saying, "Look at the effects of women not doing any work. The dishes don't get done, the laundry doesn't get done. You have less nurses," and that's valid. I'm not saying it's not true. Though it's not only women who do dishes, because single men obviously do their dishes every day. But imagine if men struck. Imagine most of your plumbers, most of your electricians, most of your farmers, most of the truck drivers who drive the food from the farm to the supermarket, right? Most of your garbage collectors. So the garbage is piling up on the street. Just those kinds of jobs you're talking about, they're seen as blue collar jobs, but they're really kind of not. I mean, the ability, like an electrician should not be seen as a blue collar worker. A plumber should not be seen as a blue collar worker. These are people that have skilled trades dealing with water systems and electrical systems. And that's they're engineers essentially. They're mechanics essentially. And the way you're talking about working on cars, the way that mechanics are seen as blue collar workers, well, why? That's an intellectual skill, the ability to know how to repair an engine and how to replace a car's wiring systems. That should be seen as an intellectual white collar job. It just happens to involve physical labor, and their clothes might get dirty when they do it, with like oil stains or whatever. But that's an intellectual skill, being able to do that. That should not be seen as a blue collar job.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people in quote unquote blue collar jobs, and I've never met a stupid one. That's the thing. I've met mechanics, I've met all sorts of people in these jobs, and none of them have ever struck me as being stupid. They're all very, intelligent people who, they earn money and they probably deserve more. And it's like, last year my heating system failed. I needed a new one, and it was some really complicated stuff going on with putting pipes through walls and stuff like that. And it doesn't look like anything I could do. it's just like all this sort of really complicated stuff. They actually managed to run an entire new pipeline through underneath my right through one of my ceilings without actually cutting through the ceiling. So like there's several meters worth of pipe before they had to actually cut a hole, and they only cut a hole when it got to the wall. So there's a lot of very clever sort of planning out and stuff like that that goes into these things. If you don't want your boiler to explode, you want somebody who's going to be intelligent and who's going to, be able to install this system without setting fire to your walls and things like that. Because when they put a pipe up against the wall, they have to put a pad behind it so that you don't it doesn't burn the wall. So a stupid person is probably not going to do that. He's probably not going to do it very well, and he'll burn your wall, and you'll have a leaky pipe because they don't do it properly and stuff like that. You need somebody who's smart enough to understand how all of these machines work and how they all fit together, and to make them work properly. There's some pretty complicated stuff going on there. Like electrical engineering, all those quadratic equations that you're forced to learn in school. That's the sort of job where they use them. Like they'll do a quadratic equation to work out like electrical loads, I think, and things like that. I'm not familiar with exactly what it was, but I talked to an engineer about it, and he was like, yeah, they use like quadratic equations all the time and stuff like that. I mean, they probably have they probably have special programs to do a lot of it, but when you're out in the field and you've got to work something out on the fly, you just get out your calculator and you do the whole equation right there on a piece of paper. It's it's that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that's we should be encouraging people into that. So yeah, does anyone have anything else they'd like to say on this, or should we move on to a new topic?
Final thought on it. And that's the thing is, you hit it on the head. You don't meet anybody that goes into those type of blue collar jobs that's not smart at what they do. However, the moment you talk with somebody that's in a white collar job, such as I'll call my profession out, IT support. How many times have you guys been on the phone with your ISP and it makes you just want to rip your hair out because the person that's on the other line is just like reading off a script?
Oh, the last time I was on the phone to McKeithy, I wanted to murder people.
Exactly. So, and that's the problem I have is I'm still going for my bachelor's degree. I don't have any certs in what I do for a living. I'm just really smart at what I do in my career field. I don't work in aviation anymore. I work in IT, as I stated before. But yeah, no. I strongly actually discourage people to not go into IT because there's a lot of people that are in IT that are at high level positions where I seriously question them on a daily basis of how on earth did you get here?
You got a few pointy haired bosses, eh?
I have lost way too much hair. I'm now going bald on the top of my head.
Oh no, that's not what I meant. I meant you had pointy haired bosses. From it's the Dilbert thing.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I mean, you can get people who are like sons or daughters of the CEO who get put into positions of power, and they've been coddled their entire lives and they're useless because of it.
That's
Yeah,
an argument.
moving on from that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, kind of tying into what was said before about how boys are affected in education because colleges stress giving scholarships to girls. is it a good idea to give a scholarship based on gender? And it's not to say that girls aren't capable or qualified, but just keep it as giving a scholarship based on being capable and qualified. And I think it's part of the reason why you have bad bosses, and you were saying people who were coddled their entire life. It's similar to giving scholarships or programs based on gender, because you're now saying the reason why we're picking you for this is not because of the work that you've done. It's not because of your intelligence or your abilities or your skills. It's because of the way you were born is a factor, which is just something that I don't like. And that I think that gender should not be a factor. I think if a girl is smarter than a boy and she has better grades and does better work, then she should get the scholarship. But I also think if a boy has the better work, then he should get the scholarship. And I think that you're going to lower society if you start using identity of how you were born, something that you can't control or change, and something that has nothing to do with your actual skills or ability, such as gender, is a deciding factor in who you hire, who you give a scholarship to, who you rate highly, etc.
It's all a bit Jim Crow, isn't it? Like they're giving special advantages to one particular group of people based on characteristics that nobody can control and that everyone was born with. It's that is Jim Crow. It's like,
Well,
Especially
No.
as
you can control
especially
the
as today,
perspectives.
it's men who are behind mostly. Like in our age group, really anyone under 40, anyone under 50 almost, grew up at a time where statistically men were behind in education and behind in employment, are less likely to own their own home, are less likely to buy their own car, are more likely to go to prison. I mean, when you think of feminism today, imagine if those stats were reversed. Imagine if the statistics were that women were more likely to be unemployed, and women were less likely to go to college, and women were less likely to own a home, and women were less likely to own a car, and more likely to be homeless, and more likely to be in prison. I mean, just imagine what the narrative might be. But we have a society where men are behind in pretty much every major socioeconomic factor. And yet we still have the narrative that men are privileged, that boys are privileged. And
well,
it starts from a young age.
I think it's because basically they've managed to set men as the default, and then that has allowed them to say that women are basically a minority group. I think that's the way they're basically framing it, is women are a minority group, and that they'll bundle them in with minorities, like they'll say women and minorities, and like they're basically smuggling them into the same category as people who are for racism and things like that. Well, mostly men, actually.
So my question becomes though on that whole scholarship thing. What happens if a guy or a male goes applies to the school, claims that they are a female or they are identifying as a female, and that they are eventually going to be getting the gender reassignment surgery, then are they still able to get that scholarship? And if they just say that, hey, yes, they're going to be getting the gender reassignment surgery, but they never give a firm date and they keep saying it all throughout their years of college, are they then still able to get that scholarship, or is it only a scholarship that is given to those who are naturally born females? Because if that's the case, then do we see where the hole in this whole thing it comes into play?
I'm
Oh, we talk about this all the time. How, and we've seen some articles. We've actually had a talk about this. I think about 3 months ago. Mom, was it about trans men? And there was a very excellent article from several trans men sharing their experiences about how when they became legally recognized and socially recognized as men, how many things got more difficult for them. And I've always made the argument that MRAs, the men's rights movement, we are better for trans folks than feminists are, because we consider questions like yours. We consider questions like car insurance, like conscription, like pension ages. We really look at what are the consequences of what gender are you legally considered and socially considered, and how do you make that distinction? So,
And we don't
actually,
have a turf arm. We don't have an arm of us who's like consider trans people to be like evil and stuff like that. Or like fake men or something. You know, like we
Before,
just.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying we were. We just don't have that hate movement within our movement against them either. But we do actually have an upcoming article on Men Are Human about by a trans person. But that will. Well, we're just waiting for them to get back to me on it.
Before coming into the MRA space, I figured everyone was conservative and excluded trans people and stuff.
The Conservatives do. Is that what you said? Sorry.
Sorry, what?
Did you say you came from a conservative space which like rejected trans people as well?
No, no. I was always told that MRAs were like incels and MGTOW in the way
Oh,
that they're conservative and you know, didn't accept trans people and gay people. And so I was really skeptical coming into this group many years ago when I did join. So I was expected to be met with conservative hospitality. I can't pronounce the word. Hostility. There we go. And so I'm really surprised to see that you guys aren't like that.
oh yeah, yeah. That's something of a myth they created by, well, basically, framing us. So it's yeah, no. Half the staff here is LGBT. And, we have a trans member of staff, and some leaders of the movement are trans, and it's we don't care,
Yeah, no,
and
the men's like for us, uh, we like yeah, I may get really angry at times, as you heard me get worked up, but at the end of the day, around here, we're here for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're born a male or identify as male, identify as an Apache attack helicopter, identify as a Ford Raptor. Doesn't matter what you identify as. We're here for everyone. And yeah, there are some topics where some of us will get heated, and just part of life. Like we all have those topics that we all know about from one another, um, because certain things have touched us in one way or another in this community, and we don't sugarcoat it. We all know, hey, we're here to help each other out through whatever issues may be here for that we're all facing. And we all know around here that at the end of the day, we all got each other's back. And we've got anybody else out there, we've got their backs if they ever need somebody that they just want to come in and they just need to vent to somebody. That's why this community is here. Like, I can't tell you how helpful this community was for me personally when I was going through my divorce stuff last year. Um, it was very helpful, and I still keep an eye on the community. I don't always talk, but I'm always here listening and watching over things, and occasionally pop in when I get a chance.
I'm really glad to hear that, Network. It's really that's really that really makes it feel worthwhile. You saying that, and thank you. Um, the I find the whole political thing quite interesting because I think most of us like when we do all these political tests as a joke, we just test like slightly left of center on average, or we're just it's just all over the place. Like we've on the sub we've got like one of the subs we've got like a left wing, right wing sort of thing, and I think we've only got one person with the right wing tag, and that's it really. Yeah. Anyway, does anyone have any other sort of questions to do with this, or? Okay, should we move on to another topic, or
I was gonna ask with the boys day that we're talking about, what about the reluctance to diagnose and medicate boys um with certain disabilities or mental issues versus the girls who are taken very seriously. Like for ADHD, for example, girls will get medication if they're diagnosed. Boys will be told to be quiet, to sit down, or they're given medication but no therapy and no behavioral um, training or whatever it is the girls get. Is that an
Okay,
issue?
well, that's interesting because I've actually always heard the opposite. I always heard that, and I've always read that boys are over prescribed drugs for ADHD, such as Adderall and Ritalin, and that even from a young age, second, third, fourth grade, boys are essentially given legalized speed, and that has an effect on their brain. So I've always understood it the other way around. So I've always understood that boys are overly diagnosed with ADHD and overly diagnosed. Networking Wolf, I can tell you really want to talk about this, so go on.
So, I can actually speak from personal experience on this because I have ADHD combined and a completely different diagnosis as well called dyslexia. Two different things that I'm diagnosed with. So, let's begin. Been diagnosed from a really young age. So, yeah, let's begin. I've been through plenty of medication. Been off medication for a long time. uh, I strongly hate medication for one reason alone. When I was a young child, I was on way too many different medications to the point where it literally was adult level prescriptions. I forget which one did it to me, but I almost tried to kill myself multiple times. Sad part of life. Yeah. And I was literally a twig. I was under 100 pounds and 6 feet tall. That was fun. Anyways, so when it comes
Do
to
you
talks
think
of, yeah,
do you think that if you were to go through behavior therapy, it is what they do for girls, instead of giving them like high levels of medication, if the medication doesn't work, they put them through behavioral training instead of the boys where they just hype them up on medication constantly. Do you think that would have been beneficial in giving you kind of some coping mechanisms and
no,
give you a better sense of life?
no. So what helped me out was a program called Young Marines and my father. So Young Marines is basically where um, they take real Marine Corps DIs or real Marines that were either in the Marine Corps that are currently serving or were serving, and stick them with kids that either have issues, could be whatever. Mine was unable to listen, unable to focus because of everything that was going on. And you go down for 1 day a week, which was every Tuesday at 6 p.m., and you get drilled. Then on top of that, we had the ability, like if I got in trouble at my school, my teachers or my parents could call my drill sergeants and my drill instructors, um, and they'd show up at my school with they would tell me, all right, we're going to run to your house, you're going to change, and then we're going to go out for some PT. That is what helped me. And it was through those coping mechanisms of being able to change from forcing myself on the medication and being um, having to suppress uh, the energetic side of myself to being able to now take that energy and use that energy and those bursts of energy that I get, because I do still get them, as you can tell, to focus it in on my passions and on my desires, which has become IT, where I can literally sit in front of the computer and I can just hyper focus in on somebody's issue for hours and hours and eventually figure out the issue. I don't. And now again, it doesn't help with everybody. You have to figure out what helps specific people. Um, but I don't personally think that there is a one size fits all pill for the when it comes to those type of topics and those type of calls. Some people that I know that have ADHD, that are both male and female, they responded better with lower doses of medication, and there are some that just didn't, like myself.
Yeah, I'm going to be slightly controversial here and say that to a large extent, the problems people have with things like ADHD, autism, and all that sort of stuff has nothing to do with the child being, uh, like poorly put together or anything like that, or not good for the environment. It's the environment not being good for the child. It sounds an awful lot like you didn't have any problems except the dyslexia, and that the system you were in wasn't any good for you. It sounds an
Yeah.
awful lot like putting you in the right environment would have meant that you succeeded at a massive, in a massive way.
Yeah. For someone that's got ADHD, or any type of learning disability, you have to figure out how to challenge the child or the adult, um, and you have to hone in on how do you challenge them. Now that could be, okay, do we give them harder problems like in math? Do we stick him or her at a higher grade level for math to challenge them and to get them to focus more? Or do we stick them at some other levels that may seem a little weird to focus and get them to be challenged more? But like for me, when I have kids eventually, because I do want to have some, I don't ever plan on throwing my kids onto medication. I plan on working with my children to challenge them more and figure out, okay, what do you need to challenge yourself?
Well, I'm glad he won't throw them on it because I, I think that you'd probably be good working with the ADHD kids. I think, in fact, that we should probably have schools specifically for ADHD kids, like boarding schools, because I think that if you put them all together and treated them in a way which was conducive to like their way of thinking, then I think that you would have a much better learning environment, because I think that it's like, you're just like a fish trying to climb a tree, basically. I think that's a lot of mental disorders, quote unquote disorders, and a lot of things like that aren't really at their high functioning range, at least in a lot of cases, aren't actually disorders, but can be benefits. Like high functioning autism is another way of saying ace computer programmer, or like something like that. It's you end up being able to understand computers perfectly and how they work, and being able to program in like compiler and stuff like that.
Yeah, the only thing that people with ADHD and dyslexia and all those, and I can speak from experience, the only thing that we have massive issue trying to understand is humans, and especially people of the other gender. I'm sorry, I still to this day don't understand women.
Mm. Well, that's something that can be taught. It's like, it's swings and roundabouts. But I do think that the one thing that you shouldn't do is put them all on pills, because what that does is you end up with a kid who gets through academia, flies through academia, and then crashes because their brain has been chemically castrated, and they're just incapable of operating by the time they get out of it. It does actually change your brain structure, and you end up lacking any kind of motivation is a common symptom that I've heard. You end up basically being somebody who was called a genius and then ends up playing computer games for the rest of their life in like a little room. And that's a typical story from what I've heard. And I think that's really sad, because if you instead treat them properly, then you can create people who are highly successful. I think the factory style schooling system has a lot to answer for. And yeah, it's
And
it
that's
makes
the thing is everybody that has learning disabilities, we all are unique in our own sense of adventures. Like if you have TikTok, there's a content creator out there. He talked and he goes over the benefits of actually dating somebody that has ADHD, and one of the benefits of it is literally, and I don't talk about this much, but we're basically giant kids, and I'm not even kidding you at all. I have bins still full of Legos, so days when I don't feel like dealing with technology, I'll pull out my bins of Legos, or if I feel like, hey, like if somebody just wants to buy me something and they don't want to spend a lot of money on me, I tell this to a lot of people. Just get me something that's shiny. I don't care what it is. If it's shiny, I'll love it. It's stupid things like that, especially for us that for those of us like myself that have ADHD. We love small gifts that are shiny or things like Legos. I don't know why,
are you
but
sure you're not a crow instead of a wolf?
I hey, my bike does have chrome on it. I do like chrome.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's weird things like that I've picked up on the years, and I've met a lot of people that have ADHD, that are actually in in IT. Um, and another thing is like people that have learning disabilities. We are yeah, we tend to a lot of us tend to go into computers or a niche skill like computers and IT. But those of us that I've met in IT were very successful in it, and we tend to be some of the best technicians that you can find because we tend to take the route of I am 90% of the time somebody's therapist and 10% of the time your actual technician. So even though it may only take me 2 minutes to fix your actual computer issue, I can sometimes just tell from somebody's body language that hey, they may be having some issue at home, and I'll be like, hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee at the cafeteria and talk for a couple minutes? And that one ticket that should have only taken me 2 minutes could turn into a ticket that takes me an hour and a half. But an hour and 28 minutes of that is literally just me spent talking with the person over a cup of coffee about how there's an issue at home, and it helps them out a lot more.
That's kind of cool. I'm glad you do that. That sounds like a pretty good thing, really. I think as well that people who are very technical like that and who are good with computers but not meant necessarily with people, when they enter into these offices where they are surrounded by people who are also like that, then they've found their tribe, and suddenly there's all these people who they can relate to, who are just like them, and that probably allows them to create a social circle, which I think would be, very helpful to them as well. And I think that's a good thing. Like people think of IT as a very uh, you're on your own sort of thing, but actually, if you've got like a squad of people there, then you're definitely not on your own. If you're like working for a corporation or something, you've got like a whole IT room.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, especially when you work in a lot of these like niche jobs, it helps to. Ooh, okay, that really just sorry, that just distracted me. I saw sparkly and shiny in the voice discussion. That's shy. That's just uh oh yeah, as I said. Uh this is another thing that people with some learning disabilities have, myself being one of them. Um we tend to, especially those of us that have ADHD, we get distracted easily. And it just does happen. Uh it's just one of those things of life. And my mom always knew, like, from a young age with me, like, yeah, learning the typical way is not going to be helpful. So instead, whenever I got home from school, she'd always take away the chairs at the kitchen table. And she'd be like, all right, we're going to stand up and we're going to do your homework at the kitchen table.
An interesting strategy. It sounds like it works too.
Mm-hmm. I was never an A-B student. I was a C-D student. But hey, C's and D's get degrees.
Mm, yeah, it's well, anyway, I think we've gone on for 2 hours now. So unless anyone has another topic they'd like to talk about, my throat's getting kind of raw. So I would quite like to leave the floor open to somebody else if they want to talk. Yeah, any interesting things we've got? Possibly we could talk about what we're going to talk about next week. If anyone's got a particular topic that's burning a hole in their pocket or anything like that. No, all right then. Well, good night, everyone. Please let me know if you do have a topic that you'd like to talk about. We're always open. You can send me a DM or you can tag me in the chat and just tell me, or one of the other people here, just whatever you want to talk about. We're usually very easy on a topic unless there's a bunch of them, in which case we'll just pick whichever one's most interesting. But yeah, all right. Good night, people.
Good night.
Right, man.
Good night, P. Good night, networking. Good night, Kathleen, if you're still there. And good night,
Sorry.
Kathleen's parrots.
So yeah, there you go. There are kitty pigs.
Okay. I'm gonna stay on the line for um long anyone wants, but however long people are gonna be here. I sent you the link, I believe.
Okay. I love shiny things. Okay.
I have Discord Nitro, so I have so many
Gotcha.
cute emojis. Um, I really just go to groups to collect their emojis, and like every once in a while, I'll say something or I'll pop in to pretend that I'm like there, but I'm really just there because I like the emoji.
See, that's the thing is, and I'm sorry if I got really heated at some of that stuff. Like, don't. I'm a big old soft teddy bear. Um, that's one thing that you'll find out about me. Is even though I get heated with some of the debates and topics that we talk about, I'm just a big old soft teddy bear.
I understand. I was there when you talked about a lot of what you went through. I think I sat on the line with you for like 5 hours at one point, just listening to everything you had been through. I understand where that comes from. I don't judge you. Um,
Yeah,
I completely get it.
and thank you. That means a lot because there is a lot of people that don't quite get what I mean when I talk um about everything, and they just assume like, oh, you what you've gone through is rah, 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 rah. It's like, yeah. But yeah, no, if you ever want to see kitty pictures, just don't ever be afraid to ask because she's always fun. She's always photogenic.
Thank you. I have 3 cats and 3 rats right now.
Oh, wait, three what?
Rats. They're in
Oh.
a cage, so
Do the cats ever go up to them and like, hey, can we play?
yeah, they do. They love them. One of them just cuddles all the time. And my rats are so used to human contact and cat contact that they don't even flinch when the cats come near them, which I think is a good thing, unless they ever get out and I'm not supervising them, because
Yeah,
then that might end badly. But
and that's the thing is, I eventually I want to get some more animals, but like my little one, she loves just being an only little kitty, because then she gets all the attention she ever wants from me. Oh my gosh, I love that one where it's like little dude going back and forth with the rainbows. That's awesome.
I have to find which group that is in.
The
Give
dancing
me a
rainbow
second.
cat. Oh, that's so cool.
Sorry, my kids are playing and they're really loud, like,
You're all
constantly.
good. Don't worry, take your time.
That's why I'm always muted.
You're all good. Yeah, no, my mom, she's an early childhood teacher, so you never have to apologize with me about little ones being loud.
Are we
I'm,
the only ones on the line right now? I just
uh,
asked because I'm looking through. I can't see.
it's just Kathleen and then MHR streamer bot, but yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I just can't look right now. I'm literally going through my groups to send you cute emojis for you to add to your collection.
So if you
Um,
don't mind me asking, what's your story? Since you know mine.
oh God. I have been through so much. Um, you're not gonna like my answer, but most of my abuse has been by men. I don't hate them for it or anything like that. I don't generalize men because of it or anything like that. I used to. I used to a lot, but um, I've kind of grown out of that, you know. I, as a child, um, I was sexually abused by my female cousins. I didn't know what was going on. I was just going along with whatever they said. And as I got older into my teenage years, I didn't understand that it wasn't okay for an adult to want those things from me. And I remember this one woman um, convincing me to do things with her sexually. I didn't know that it was wrong at the time. I was only like 12 or 13, so my mind wasn't developed enough. Um, and then as I got older, it was primarily men. Um, and then at one point, I completely hated men, like completely hated the idea of men. Because I had this boyfriend who was abusive and he would pull guns on me and um like anytime we had an argument or anything, he would pull a gun in my face and threaten to kill me. And I fell into this habit of just completely despising the male gender as a whole. And then when I got out of that toxic relationship, I realized that there are good people out there. It's not just, you know, um, not just that. So I've had a lot of growing to do, but my story is like way longer than that. Um, I think I got into men's rights because um, I had this friend who talked about how he was abused growing up and stuff like that, and like there's no help or anything like that, and I just kind of got into it. I joined incel and MGTOW groups thinking that was the place to go because I didn't know at the time. And that did nothing for me at all. That just made me think that men hate women. And then I found this group about 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or something. Um, and it's really changed my perspective on everything that I took in, if you know what I mean, like everything that I learned. So internalize. That's the word.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't, you know, I'll be honest for you. I'll be straight up and honest with you. Guys are assholes. We really are. Um, there is no, there's no good way of saying it. There are a lot of assholes and jackasses in this world that all they want to do is find a woman that they can dominate and then destroy and move on with their life. Um, they don't want to do anything else. And I feel really bad because, so many people do get the wrong impression out of us that we are like that. And that is the one thing that I really try hard here to make it known to everybody that look, like, yeah, there are some of us that are just straight up jerks in this world, but around this community, you can literally ask any of us a question and you may get a smart ass remark, but we're pretty much chill, you know? And I do feel bad about, I'm sorry that that's what happened to you. Um, but I am extremely happy though that you got out of that situation.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay, sorry.
You're
Sometimes
fine.
my connection messes up. I have to leave and join again.
You're fine. What part did you hear from me?
I think the last part was you can ask anyone in this community and we will, and then it cut off.
Oh, Yeah, you can ask anybody in this community any type of question, and you'll probably you'll get a straight answer out of anybody around here. We're all very friendly. No one around here wants any ill will to anyone. Uh, that was one of the kind of weirdest things that I found out when I got here. I was like, this
Same
wasn't
here.
this wasn't like a giant bro fest. Like, oh man, you gotta man up and all that type of like macho stuff.
Yeah, that's what I expected. Because I got into, like I said, incel and MGTOW group, trying to understand their point of view and sympathize with them, empathize with them, you know what I mean? And it did not help because they assumed I was female immediately, which I am female from birth, but I don't identify with that. I'm not trans man, I'm non-binary. So a lot of people get that confused, but they would hear my voice or whatever, and